Well, hello, happy day 4 of this study together. We're talking about the exile, the Babylonian exile, and I don't actually have any passages for us to read today. What I want you to do is to spend some time thinking and praying about your response to the current exile, the pandemic that we find ourselves in. I want you to spend some time thinking and praying about how you understand God to be present in this difficult time. There are lots of different ways in which people understand God. Some would say that God has caused this pandemic to bring us some sort of awareness. I don't personally believe that, but some would say that. Some would say that God gives free will in creation and all parts of creation. And what that means is that diseases enter and humans make decisions, and that all of that has mixed together, and that our freedom and the freedom of creation has brought that to be here. So what's important is for you to further develop your understanding of who God is and where God is during the difficult times in life. Because what we all know is that this pandemic is not going to be the last difficult time in our lives, except for those who perish because of the pandemic. For those of us who make it out on the other side, life will somehow be more normal someday, and there's going to be more difficult experiences. And so one of the gifts that this pandemic gives to us is some time and space, right? We can't go and do all the things that we'd want to do. We're much less busy than most other times in life. So why don't we spend some of our time being busy in developing our understanding of where God is in the difficult times? So then when we get ourselves into another difficult time someday, we have a deep sense of where God is. And as we try to walk alongside others in their difficult times, we can help them understand where God is. So the example is this. In this exile story, there are two different groups of people. One who, when the war happens, they scatter into the hills. And their belief is that this is happening, Jerusalem's being destroyed, because God is punishing us. They believe that they are living in this desolated land, that there is little hope, and they're questioning whether God has deserted them. That's a pretty bleak picture. The other group of people that were captured in the war, and they were largely more educated and politically powerful or wealthy or connected kind of people. They are exiled as a community over to Babylon, and they spend a couple generations over there. And they believe that they have been exiled because of the sinfulness of Israel. So same thing, God is punishing them. They live in a pretty good place, right? I mean, they're not living in caves in the mountains. They're living in a like a decent sized, nice refugee camp in Babylon. They are the more elite and educated folks. They begin to believe that God has more in store for them than simply national destiny, that God has more in store for Israel than just protecting our borders. In fact, what they begin to believe again is the original Abrahamic promise, and that is that they will be a light to the nations. Israel will be a light to the nations. And they get excited about that. And eventually they begin to say, let's go home. It's time. So one group who's really destructed in all of this, in every way, physically, spiritually. Another group that though they've experienced the same, sort of tragedy, and their life circumstance has given them the ability to see a future that God has for them, and to believe that God is still with them. Let me just say that's so important. That's so important when you get yourself into a difficult place in life, to know that God is still with you, and to believe that God still has a future for you. Just this week I was talking to two people in our congregation, both who have been battling cancer, and both who just in the last week have received bad news about upcoming treatments, and they're both in difficult places. And I was struck by both of them. The ways in which they I'm sorry, I'm sad thinking about these folks. The ways in which they explained their faith, the ways in which they understood where God is in the midst of this, the ways that they both hold out hope for what God has for them. It was a powerful witness to me. You see, I'm emotional talking about this. But they're people of faith who have walked with God so closely in their lives that they know who God is. And so now that their lives are in a difficult place, they have a deep understanding of God's presence for them. And because they have a deep understanding of God's presence with them, they have high hope for the future. And so I'd encourage you today to think about, spend some time asking yourself, where is God in this pandemic? How does that work? What is God doing? Who's responsible? If God's responsible, then why? If God's not responsible, then who is? Now, these are all big. We call these theodicy. These are our understanding of God. It's so important to get to the bottom of it. And so I share that rather than share scripture with you on this day. I share those questions for you to spend some time on this day furthering your understanding of where God is in these difficult times, so that you can hold on to that foundation and you'll have it forever. May that be our prayer for this day. God bless.